हेलो एवरीवन, वेलकम बैक टू एनसीईआरटी कक्षा। अर्पिता की एनसीईआरटी कक्षा में आपका स्वागत है। टुडे वी आर स्टार्टिंग विद चैप्टर नंबर 7 ऑफ क्लास 12th एनसीईआरटी। आज हम चैप्टर 7 से स्टार्ट करेंगे, विच इज राइज ऑफ पॉपुलर मूवमेंट्स। नाउ आई होप यू ऑल आर टेकिंग डाउन द नोट्स ऑफ दिस लेक्चर, बिकॉज आज के चैप्टर का कोई पीडीएफ हम प्रोवाइड नहीं करेंगे। आज आपको क्लास के साथ साथ नोट्स बनाने हैं। यू हैव टू मेक नोट्स विद द क्लास इटसेल्फ टुडे। ओके, सो इन दिस पर्टिकुलर लेक्चर वी आर गोइंग टू स्टडी what are popular movements and what are the different kinds of popular movements that happened in India. Which sections of Indian society have these popular movements mobilized? What is the main agenda of these popular movements? And we are going to study what is the role played by these movements in a democratic setup like India. इंडिया जैसे डेमोक्रेटिक नेशन में इन मूवमेंट्स का क्या मेजर रोल है, ये भी हम पढ़ने जा रहे हैं आज के लेक्चर में. So I hope you all are ready with today's lecture. Popular movement basically is a kind of group action wherein the people in groups they participate. It's also called as social movement. So we can call it a people's movement also. हम popular movement को ना यहाँ पर आप लिख सकते हो. हम popular movement को people's movement भी बोलते हैं. We also call it people's movement. Okay, it may also refer to number of political parties who come together, right, on some agenda, on some common topic of welfare. So that is a people's movement, that is a popular movement. Now what is the nature of popular movement? तो popular movement का nature क्या होता है? This is also very important question that can be asked. The nature of popular movement is collective action. From time to time, popular movements have taken place, and that shows, or you can say that reflects the collective nature of the people of a country. That is popular movement. उसको हम बोलते हैं यहाँ पर popular movement. यहाँ तक point clear हो गया? Okay. Now here we will understand that popular movements can be simple also and it can be complex also. How it can be complex? Because it depends on group to group. The thinking capability of a particular person or a particular group, the intention of a particular group. That is why the popular movements also differ. And that is why we can say popular movements can be simple also, it can be complex also, because it depends on the intentions and on the thinking of the groups that are taking out these movements. Now there are party based movements as well. जब हम popular movement की बात करते हैं ना, तो इसी में party based movements भी होते हैं. Now what are party based movements? These are those movements which are in close association with the political parties. They follow the objectives and ideologies of a political parties. So popular movements, you can write it over here, they are divided into two types. First is the party based movement and second are the non-political movements. पार्टी बेस्ड मूवमेंट्स कैन बी पॉलिटिकल मूवमेंट्स आल्सो. तो ये पार्टी बेस्ड मूवमेंट हो गए और ये हो गया नॉन पॉलिटिकल मूवमेंट. दीज आर टू काइंड्स ऑफ पॉपुलर मूवमेंट. नॉन पार्टी मूवमेंट्स डू नॉट कीप एनी काइंड ऑफ एसोसिएशन विद पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज. दे हैव इंडिपेंडेंट आइडियोलॉजी, इंडिपेंडेंट स्ट्रैटेजी, इंडिपेंडेंट टैक्टिक. नाउ सम ऑफ द पॉपुलर मूवमेंट्स दैट वी आर गोइंग टू डिस्कस टुडे आर चिपको मूवमेंट, अ वेरी फेमस काइंड ऑफ मूवमेंट. The movement began in 2 or 3 villages of Uttarakhand in the early 1973 when the forest department refused permission to the villagers to fell the ash trees for making agricultural tools. However, the forest department allotted the same patch of land to a sports manufacturer for commercial usage. And because of this, the villagers were very angry. They protested against the move of the government. The struggle also started spreading across many parts of Uttarakhand region. So it was a kind of environmental movement to prevent the cutting down of trees. The local communities, they demanded that we should have control over our natural resources. The government is interfering in our area. That was the demand. The communities wanted the government to provide low cost materials to small industries and also ensure the development of the environmental region, the forest region, without disturbing the ecological balance. And this movement took up the economic issues of landless forest workers. It asked for guarantees of minimum wage, and even women started participating in this movement. So women's active participation was the most noble aspect of this movement. This was a very famous movement at that time. The second very famous movement was the movement of Dalit Panthers. The Dalit Panthers was a kind of a militant organization of the Dalit youth which was formed in Maharashtra in 1972. And their activities were mostly centered around fighting against the increased atrocities on the Dalits in various parts of Maharashtra. The larger, ideological agenda of this militant organization was to remove the caste system and to build a very strong organization for all the oppressed sections. In the post-emergency period, the emergency period we studied in the last lecture, in the post-emergency period, the Dalit Panthers got involved in electoral compromises. It also underwent many splits, which led to the decline of this movement, of this organization as a whole. So this is also an example how political scenario, political environment, and the political interference can also make or destroy a movement which had good agenda, good intentions in the beginning. The next very famous movement was the Bharatiya Kisan Union movement, wherein there was an organization, this BKU, it was an organization of farmers from western UP and some part of Haryana. And they, unlike other farmers, they grew cash crops for the market. Now, what exactly are cash crops? Cash crops are those crops which are marketable, which are grown for commercial purpose. For example, cashews. तो ये सारे जो crops होते हैं ये बेचने के purpose से grow किए जाते हैं in the commercial market. And this particular organization, the Bharatiya Kisan Union, was a little, far-fetched, you can say, organization. This organization did not align itself with the political parties. ये जो organization था, इसने अपने आप को political parties से align नहीं किया. This organization kept a distance from the political party so that its agenda is not corrupted, and their demand was to increase the government floor prices for sugarcane and wheat, to abolish restrictions on the interstate movement of farm produce, to guarantee supply of electricity at a reasonable rate, and their demands, the activities that they did to fulfill their demands or to pressurize the government to fulfill their demands were Jail Bharo Abhiyan, where all of them used to protest, and they used to protest with the agenda that we are going to fill up the jails. When there will be no space in the jail, right, then the government will accept a demand. So मतलब Jail Bharo Abhiyan इन्होंने चलाया कि भाई हम इतना ज़्यादा protest करेंगे कि गवर्नमेंट हमें जेल में भरेगी, और जेल में जब जगह नहीं बचेगी ना तो गवर्नमेंट को हमें रिलीज करना ही पड़ेगा और हमारी डिमांड्स माननी ही पड़ेगी. That was a unique way of protesting. Then the rallies, they carried out demonstrations. These were the different kind of activities that they did to make sure that the demands are heard by the government. That you have to remember. All right. Now, very famous and very unique kind of movement also took place in the early 1990s, which was the anti-Iraq movement. When the BKU was mobilizing the farmers of the north, and altogether different kind of mobilization took place in the rural areas which shaped the southern state of Andhra Pradesh. It was a very spontaneous mobilization of women who were demanding a ban on the sale of local alcohol, which was arak, in their neighborhoods. So there was this liquor mafia that was, taken to heels as, the women started hitting back to it. Local mafia था, liquor mafia, वो एक locally brewed alcohol को बेच रहे थे, arak, which was health wise also very bad and which was socially also very bad. ठीक है, health wise also it has a very poisonous and negative impact on the people around the neighborhood. And then after drinking this arak alcohol, they used to abuse women. The men used to violently abuse women, their own wives. The women in that neighborhood were not safe. So, what happened in the early 1990s, women of the Dubagunta area in the Nellore district of Andhra Pradesh, they enrolled themselves in the adult literacy drive. And during the class of the adult literacy drive, the women started complaining of this locally brewed alcohol named arak. Okay, and how it had a very negative impact not just on the health of the men but also in their neighborhoods, the social aspects of the neighborhood. Now here, the simple demand to ban the arak alcohol touched upon a larger social, economic and political issues of the region that affected a women's life. And this movement inspired other women movement also, which came in the later period. So this was a very famous, a very hugely successful and very famous movement which showed the, you can say, empowerment of women, the courage of women. So when we talk about the next important movement, that is the Narmada Bachao Andolan or NBA, it is an Indian social movement led by very famous leaders like Medha Patkar, Baba Amte, by native tribal people, farmers, environmentalists, human rights activists, etc. against the construction of a number of large dams under the Narmada Dam project across river Narmada. We know that river Narmada flows through the states of Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra. When we talk about river Narmada, it is the largest west flowing river in the Indian peninsula. This is important for prelims. Now the Narmada river, basically it arises, please write it down. It arises on the plateau of Amarkantak. On the plateau of Amarkantak, which is in Madhya Pradesh. And it covers the states of Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat and Maharashtra and some parts of Rajasthan also. Its entire course, the length or the entire course of this river is 1312 kilometers to the Arabian Sea. And it has around 41 tributaries. Total 41 tributaries हैं इस river की, ये आपको point याद रखना है. Alright, and Narmada basin is a very rich basin when it comes to the natural resources. So what is this Narmada Bachao Andolan? This Narmada Bachao Andolan is a very powerful mass movement which started in 1985 against the construction of a huge dam on the river Narmada. The proposed Sardar Sarovar Dam and Narmada Sagar, they were going to displace more than 250,000 people. So this is a big fight to save the Narmada river. Sardar Sarovar Dam is in Gujarat. It is the biggest dam in Narmada river. इस पहला focal point इसका यही था कि वही नर्मदा movement को save करना है. ठीक है? तो इसके key points हम पढ़ लेते हैं. Key points हमको पता होने चाहिए. Let's understand them. This Narmada Bachao Andolan, this movement, it demanded that there should be a cost-benefit analysis of major developmental projects, including the social cost as well. Now, what is the social cost? Let us understand that also. The social cost, what are they talking about here? These are the three social costs. Forced resettlement of project affected people. So the people who were affected by the construction of these dams on Narmada river, they were forcefully, basically pressurized to resettle. Forced resettlement हुआ, they lost their means of livelihood, their culture, and the ecological resources were also depleted. We know that the Narmada river basin is rich in natural resources. That was also depleted because of the construction of these different dams on the river. These were the social costs which were involved, and that is why this movement is being fought since so many years. Okay. So basically this movement used every available democratic strategy to put forward its demand. 20 years से भी ज़्यादा की agitation है अभी तक जो चली आ रही है नर्मदा बचाओ आंदोलन की. So now let us understand what are the lessons that we have learned from these popular movements. There are many lessons. For example, through these popular movements we learned how to represent ourselves, how to keep forward our demands in front of the elected government. We got new forms of active participation, which broadened our idea of participation in India's democracy. For example, the Arab movement. It also helped us to understand better nature of democratic politics. We had studied that in the democratic form of politics, we can ask questions, we can raise our demands, but how to do that? That we learned through these popular movements only. Okay. So this is the homework for today. ये आज आपका homework है. Would you consider the anti-Iraq movement as a women's movement? Explain why. So first you will explain what was this anti-Iraq movement, where did it originate? And then you will explain how women started participating in the movement, what were the key demands of women and why it will be considered as a women's movement. And how it empowered the women, right, to take up such serious causes. Question second is explain the motive behind Dalit Panthers movement, Narmada Bachao Andolan and Chipko movement. What were the aim, what were the aspirations, objectives and reason behind these movements that you have to explain. So this is your homework for today. ये है आपका आज का homework. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. If you have any doubts regarding the questions or regarding the chapter, do let me know in the comment section.